Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
As she battled with herself, a layer of sweat had already formed in her palm. Thinking that it was a good opportunity to break away from his grasp, she pulled her hand away when he wasn't noticing and pressed it to her chest, not giving him another chance to hold her again. Ren's gaze fell on her face, and there was a dull pain in his chest. This girl really was avoiding him. Just then, the bodyguard drove the car into Ren's villa. Ruka said to Ren, "Can I ask your bodyguard to take me to my friend's house?" Ken, who was about to get out of the car, froze for a moment before he turned his head and said, "They're busy. It's just half an hour away." Ruka pleaded. "No. Now gel out of the car." Ren refused to let her leave. Hence, Ruka got out of the car helplessly and watched as his bodyguard drove out of the iron gate while she stood in the empty garden in a daze. When Ren took a few steps and realized that she wasn't following him, he subconsciously looked back at her. Then, he turned around and stretched out his long arm to hold on to her wrist before leading her back to the direction of the hall. For some reason, Ruka felt a gush of hurt wash over her. Her eyes stung with tears as she struggled against him. "Can't you respect me for a moment?" Ren turned to look at her. "Respect what? Why are you so sure that I'd like you back just because you like me? Are you just that confident?" Ruka raised her head as all kinds of feelings surged in her heart, and her eyes began to turn red. Ren's lips twitched. Though the way he looked at her was still gentle, his gaze was intense and morose as if covered with a layer of dust. Ruka's breathing was caught in her throat as she found it difficult to ignore the emotions in his eyes. She lowered her head and continued, "Let's just continue with our original relationship. No matter what, you'll only be my uncle. You're a highly ranked vice president while I am just an ordinary civilian. There won't be anything between us." Saying that, Ruka quickly walked in the direction of the hall with her head lowered, leaving behind the man in the yard. She had not walked far when Ren's tall figure suddenly bent down as he covered his chest with a large palm as if he was fighting the pain in his heart. When she didn't hear any footsteps behind her, she couldn't help but turn back to take a look. Instantly, she was so shocked that she ran back to him. "What's wrong?" she asked frantically. With a hand on his waist, Ren struggled to straighten his back as he replied hoarsely, "I'm fine." Ruka didn't believe him. He didn't look like he was fine. Besides, he was holding on to his chest. Was he having any heart problems? Should I contact Elijah? She was truly panicking, both of her hands holding onto his arm tightly. Asterisk, didn't you want to leave? I'll call the bodyguards back and let them take you home now. Ren spoke in a low voice, his back straightening as if he really were fine. However, Ruka refused to leave even if he wanted her to. She shook her head and insisted, "I'm not leaving. I want to take care of you." At her words, Ren's lips curled upward indistinguishably. He nodded and agreed, "All right. Help me back to the hall so that I can rest." Ron wasn't pretending that his chest was aching. When she resolutely said those words to him earlier, there was indeed a sharp pain that shot through his heart. He didn't expect she would have such a big effect on him, enough to make his chest ache with just one sentence. In the end, he had underestimated how important she was to him. He smiled bitterly on the inside, feeling helpless. This unrequited love had started from him, but this girl didn't know anything, so he couldn't blame her for wanting to escape. To her, his feelings were both oppressive and pressuring. In the hall, Ruka hurriedly poured him a glass of water. "Quick, have a drink. Do you have a bad heart because you're usually too busy and don't get enough rest?" As Ren took the glass of water from her, he replied, "It's really nothing." He didn't want this girl to think that he was some sort of old geezer. He was already older than her in the first place, so it bothered him to hear her saying that he was in poor health. Ruka looked at his face. Even if someone said he was in his late 20s, nobody would suspect it at all. He really did look young. Do you want to know what happened to me earlier? Run looked at her with narrowed eyes. Yeah. Tell me. Ruka listened to him with a serious expression. Your words made me so angry that my heart started hurting. He pushed the blame onto her without any hesitation. Ruka's eyes widened slightly, and she pointed at herself. Me? Ren nodded. Yes, you. Ruka immediately recalled what she had said to him just now. Did he hurt himself from anger just because she had rejected him and said that there was no possibility for anything to happen between them in this life? I'm sorry. Ruka instantly apologized, her mind filled with guilt and remorse. She might have spoken a little too harshly. I should be the one apologizing. It was because I didn't respect you and didn't tell you my feelings for you in advance that I scared you. Ren apologized to her instead. Ruka raised her head, unable to look directly into his scorching eyes all of a sudden. She pursed her red lips, then replied after a while, Can we stop talking about this? I'm afraid I'll say the wrong thing and make you angry again. He blinked, his eyes locking onto her. Then, when are you planning to talk to me so that you wouldn't make me angry? Ruka caught her breath slightly, realizing that this problem could not be avoided. If that was the case, would he get angry regardless if she talked about it now or a year later? You should like someone else. When you find someone else you like, we wouldn't have to talk about this anymore, she suggested. Ren's eyebrows furrowed. If he could like someone else, would he wait until now? His feelings weren't a matter as simple as shopping at the store. He couldn't just like something else at the drop of a hat. Okay, let's not talk about it today. We'll save it for later. Thinking that he still had work to deal with, Ren got up and planned to go upstairs. Mr. Run, is your body really okay? Ruka asked worriedly behind him. The man suddenly paused in the middle of straightening his suit gracefully and turned to stare at her, correcting her words, Don't use honorifics when you talk to me in the future. Ruka was rendered speechless. Was there anything wrong with respecting him? Got it. She responded seriously. I still have to work, so you should go back to your room and rest. After Ren finished speaking, he immediately took off his suit jacket. Underneath, he was wearing an elegant three-piece suit that consisted of trousers, a shirt, and a vest. The suit made his body look slender, handsome, and strong, and it didn't seem like he was in bad health at all. When Ruka went back to the room, she wondered how Victoria would feel when she found out that she was holding Elijah in the end. After taking a bath, she lay on the bed and skimmed through a book. Though its contents were educational and important, she just couldn't seem to learn anything as her mind was full of what Victoria had said earlier. She was forced to wonder if the consequences were really that serious. Just then, Ruka's phone beeped with a notification from a text message. When she picked it up, she saw it was from her mother. Ruka, are you asleep? I heard that you're staying in Mr. Hassan's house. You have to know your manners and follow the rules. Don't disturb his work and his life, all right? Ruka pursed her lips into a smile as she replied, Mom, I haven't slept yet. Let's talk over the phone instead. Soon, her mother, Claire Belmont, called her. Ruka answered the call. Hello, Mom? I thought you were asleep. It's already 10. Why haven't you slept yet? How's your work? I'm still an intern. Mom, when are you and Dad coming back? We have 8 days of holiday for Christmas this year, so your dad and I decided to come back to spend it with you. At her words, Ruka counted the date and said happily, There's still half a month until Christmas. Yes, so we're planning to head back home. Oh, that's right, now that you're staying in Mr. Hassan's house, you have to always be careful. You can't disturb his work. Don't worry. I'll be careful. Yeah. Mr. Hassan treats us well. When he went abroad last time, he came to us for an examination. Not only did he care about your dad and I, but he also brought us a lot of gifts. We were very moved. Claire's tone was full of gratefulness. Ruka's chest tightened when she saw how much her parents respected him when she had just made him so angry that his chest started hurting. At the thought, she couldn't help but have a guilty conscience. Ruka, you should sleep earlier and fight for a chance to stay in the translation department, Claire encouraged. Okay, I know, Mom. I'll do my best. Okay. Don't stay up late now. Hurry up and sleep. Saying that, Claire hung up the phone. Ruka lay down on the bed with her face buried in the blanket. Her mind was full of Ron, and she didn't know what to do. On one end, there was what Victoria had said to her, and on the other hand, there was her parents' respect for Ron. How could she catch feelings for him? Whatever. Ruka felt that she had no resistance for Ren at all. Just 2 kisses from him had made her completely forget about her one-sided crush that had lasted 3 years. However, he was just so charming that it was shocking. If he was a little more aggressive, Ruka felt that she would only let down her guard. No woman could resist this man making a move on them, let alone a naive girl like her. When she sat up, her face was flushed, and she didn't know if she was nervous or if it was something else, but she suddenly had the urge to head outside for a drink. She didn't know if it would disturb Ren's rest either. Ruka thought about the last time she bumped into him when she went downstairs for a drink and was immediately kissed by him in the hallway. She wondered if the same would happen if she bumped into him again this time. However, if she didn't drink any water, how would she be able to sleep that night? She might even start looking for some water in her sleep. Ruka suddenly felt that she was being ridiculous. Why was she so afraid of him? Suddenly, she came up with another idea. He just had chest pain earlier. Was he fine now? What if he fainted in the study or his room and there was no one around him to notice it? Ruka immediately got out of bed and put on her woolen shoes before rushing out. She went straight to the study where Rin might be and gently turned the doorknob, but he was no longer inside. Was he back in his room? With a strange burst of courage, Ruka sped toward his bedroom. When she reached the door of his bedroom, she took a deep breath. Thinking that making sure of his safety was the most important thing no matter what, she knocked on the door. However, when the door was opened from the inside, what Ruka saw was not a fully dressed man, but a man who had just taken a shower, with only a towel wrapped around his waist. His dark hair was still dripping with water, and her gaze immediately landed on his strong muscles and distinct six-pack. Ruka hurriedly covered her face and turned her back to him. I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. I was just worried about you, so I came to check on you. Ren's lips curled upward, causing his charming dimples to appear. This woman was quite brave for daring to knock on his door late at night. Aren't you here to see me? Why aren't you looking? His deep and seductive voice sounded from behind. Ruka shook her head. How would she dare to look? Hiss, all of a sudden, she heard him hiss under his breath in pain. Ruka instinctively let go of the hand that was covering her eyes and turned to look behind only to see a handsome face with a somewhat cheeky smile. He was just acting. Ruka felt both angry and frustrated. Come in. Ren's voice was slightly hoarse, and it was gentle yet bossy. Of course, Ruka didn't dare to go in. The atmosphere around him felt too dangerous, and she didn't want to. Before she could finish thinking about it, he reached out and grabbed onto her slender arm, his force causing her whole body to stumble into his broad chest, and the door behind her slammed shut soon after. All she could smell was the minty fragrance of his freshly showered body, as well as his masculine scent. Her breathing quickened, and her brain was buzzing as she didn't know how to react. Should she push him, or should she allow him to hold her like this? Would you like to have a drink with me? Ren asked her in a low voice, before letting her go. Ruka looked up at the wine cabinet next to the couch in the bedroom, where there was an open bowl of red wine. It seemed that he had a habit of drinking red wine before going to bed. It's fine. She waved her arms in refusal. The atmosphere was already strange, and if they drank any wine, she wouldn't be able to deal with it. Are you afraid that I'd eat you? Ren curled his lips and smiled. Although I really want to. I'll respect your wishes. He also meant that as long as Ruka agreed, he would do anything. Ruka's blush spread to the tip of her ears. Then, she opened the door and fled, not forgetting to look back over her shoulder to remind him, I won't be drinking the wine. Also, you should drink less and rest early. If you have any problems, please contact me immediately. Saying that, Ruka closed the door and fled back to her room, while the man sighed a little helplessly. Why can't she stay put in her room? Why must she show up in front of me? Did she think that I'm not taking enough cold showers recently? If I take any more cold showers, I'm really going to fall sick because of her. At that thought, Ren moodily took a sip of wine. When Ruka went back to the room and closed the door, she was still thinking about whether she should lock her door, but she decided that Ren wouldn't come over in the middle of the night. She still believed in his character. After a long day of being scared, shocked, and tired, she fell asleep not long after she lay down on her bed. In the middle of the night, she woke up at the sounds of voices. She couldn't help but sit up in shock and listen carefully to the movement outside. There was indeed someone having a conversation. She was so startled that she quickly lifted her blanket and got up. What was wrong? Did something happen to Ren? She hurriedly opened the door, only to see that the lights in the villa were already on. She saw Elijah standing in the hallway at a glance and asked in a panic, Elijah, what happened to him? Mr. Hassan suddenly has a high fever. Elijah looked worried as well. Ruka looked in the direction of the bedroom and asked, Can I go in to see him? You can. Elijah nodded. Ruka hurriedly went over in her pajamas. When she opened the door and peeked inside, she saw Ren sitting on an incline in bed with an 4-drip in his arm. Next to him, there was a middle-aged doctor chatting with him. As soon as Ruka entered, Ren's eyes widened and he said to her, Go back to your room. Ruka asked worriedly, Are you all right? His voice turned a little frustrated. I told you to go back to your room. Didn't you hear me? Ruka couldn't help but feel a little hurt. She was so worried about his health, but why was he scolding her? After the middle-aged male doctor glanced at Ruka, he quickly lowered his gaze, pretending to be looking at the 4-drip equipment next to him. Seeing her bite her lip, her big eyes full of hurt, Ren softened his voice and said, Go back to your room and change your clothes before coming over. Ruka suddenly recovered her senses and lowered her head to see that she was not wearing anything underneath. Although she was wearing a set of long cotton pajamas, 2 bumps were still faintly visible. It was only then that she realized why he had gotten angry. She hurriedly wrapped her arms around her chest in embarrassment and went out. When she passed Elijah, she lowered her head and walked into the room quickly. Her hurt had disappeared all of a sudden, and she even felt like laughing. He had gotten angry just because of this? After changing her clothes with a red face, she left her room again and asked Elijah, Is Miss Parfait all right? He nodded a little awkwardly. I sent her home. Ruka didn't ask any more questions. From the half-closed door, she heard the doctor instruct, Sir, you should pay attention to your body and take hot showers as much as possible. How did you know that I was taking cold showers? Ron asked huffily. I guessed. Otherwise, it's impossible for your body to get such a high fever all of a sudden. If you have time, sir, you should find a proper girlfriend instead of always working. The doctor smiled, brushing over the topic. Rin chided with a smile, Silas, you should mind your own business. You leave me with no choice. I didn't want to make a trip in the middle of the night in this cold weather to give you an 4-drip either. Silas obviously had a good relationship with Ren, and he began leasing him very naturally. As Ruka listened to their banter, her beautiful eyes widened slightly. This man still took a cold shower in this weather? However, what did taking a cold shower have to do with getting a girlfriend? Soon after, she figured it out, and her face turned red in an instant. When she entered the room again, the 4-drip nail had already been removed from Ren, and he was pressing onto his wound with a cotton swab, while the doctor next to him, Silas, was packing his medical box. Ruka stood by Luis' bed with worry in her eyes. All right. I'll be leaving first. I'll be back tomorrow, alien. After Silas finished speaking, he said to Ruka, Miss Singed, please take care of him. If he still has a high fever, you can use alcohol to help him cool down physically, and then let me know. After speaking, he put down a bottle of alcohol. I prepared this. Just use a towel and wipe it onto him. Ruka hurriedly nodded, all right. I'll definitely take good care of him. Oh, right. Remember to let him take this medicine later. Silas placed the prescribed medicine on the table. He has to take it again in 4 hours. Saying that, Silas turned his attention to the man in bed. We'll be leaving first. Okay. I won't see you out, Ren replied. After Ruka sent Silas out, he informed Elijah of the situation, and the two headed downstairs while chatting. Ruka followed them downstairs as well to bring Ren a glass of warm water to take with his medicine. Then, Elijah reminded her again that she should call him as soon as possible if anything happened and gave her his number. Once she had sent them away and prepared a glass of water, Ruka rushed back upstairs. Ren had already gotten out of bed. With a gray robe with golden lining wrapped around his tall figure, he looked like a member of royalty. Ruka brought the glass of water to him. Drink some water and take your medicine. Ren took the glass from her and turned around to sit down on the couch. As he cooperatively finished his medicine, she sat next to him and watched him, a flash of pain appearing in her eyes. You should go back to sleep. He turned to look at her. She shook her head. No, I have to take care of you. I'll be fine after I finish the medicine. He noticed that she was still sleepy, and he didn't want to take up her sleep time. That won't work either. The doctor asked me to look after you. Saying that, Ruka shifted her body to sit next to him, and she placed her pale and small hands on his smooth and full forehead, where there was still a hot layer of sweat. She touched her own forehead in comparison, and sure enough, he was burning. You're still burning up. Do you need me to physically cool you down? She asked. The corner of Ren's mouth curled upward as he nodded. His high fever made his handsome face flush, and his eyes were bleary under the dim light. With his smile, his dimples appeared, giving him a masculine charm. As if it had knocked into something, Ruka's heart immediately began racing. She pursed her red lips and stood up. I'm going to get a towel. After she found a clean towel, she dampened it and returned to the couch, where she poured some alcohol onto it. However, she didn't know which part of his body she had to wipe. At the same time, Ren slowly loosened his night robe and stretched out his hand to pull the front of his robe open, revealing his solid and seductive chest as he said to her hoarsely, "Wipe here." Ruka's brain buzzed and she blushed. She reached out and wiped the towel on his chest, but she hardly dared to look at him. As she wiped, an arm suddenly wrapped forcefully around her waist, causing her to fall into his arms, and her face crashed into one side of his chest. Don't disturb my work," Ruka warned with a stern expression. She propped herself up on his chest and continued to wipe it, while at the same time moving the towel up his sharp collarbone to rub at his neck.
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.